This podcast is brought to you by the School of Advanced Study, University of London. All of our podcasts are available from our website, www.sas.ac.uk.
So first of all, Katarina Carlshamre from Stockholm University. Katarina's dissertation looked at work by Anne Hébert, Quebec writer, in the light of Luce Irigabay's philosophy, and at the moment she's interested in representations of parenthood in 21st century literature, especially in French and Swedish fiction. She's interested in women's transition to motherhood, the place of fathers in such texts, mental illness, and in the metaphors used to describe pregnancy and childbirth. And the title I have is New Father, New Mother, the father as caring bodily presence in Swedish mother narrative novels of the early 21st century.
Well, this, yeah, if you just clip it to your badge. Or maybe I should turn it the other way around.
It's for recording and not amplification.
Okay, so I'll speak up then. We were asked to relate to the research questions of today's workshop, and I would say that this paper mainly relates to the last one. What kinds of relationship are there between literature and real life experience, and between literature and contemporary social issues regarding the topic? The mothers I will talk about today are not at first sight particularly avant-garde or original in their mothering. They're all biological mothers to their children. They all live in heterosexual nuclear families, and they all correspond quite well to the Swedish average mother when it comes to gender positions in regard to their men. Both parents take care of the children in the household, but the mother is still doing so to a larger extent than the man. But if we look at them in light of the history of literature, or in light of the French recent mother narratives, they suddenly do become cutting edge, and they do represent changing practices of motherhood. It's not primarily the themes treated in these novels which are original or new. The women in the stories I will discuss here, and particularly three of them, aspire to freedom. They struggle to be both mothers and individuals in their own right, much in the same way as mother narrators from earlier generations have done. But they also do so differently. And my intention here is to present this difference from one particular angle. I will look at a trope which has been rare in mother narratives and mother literature, but which is frequent in these Swedish texts. It's the father as a bodily caring presence. And I will give examples of what this presence means for the narrating mother. I will use examples from 4 different novels, and did we distribute
Yes.
Okay, so they're all on the handout. And these novels are written and set in a time where gender equal parenting has been a political ideal for 40 years. They're set in a time and a place where the hegemony of social democracy, which prevailed for a large part of the 20th century, has given place, according to historians such as Rydström and Tjäder, that I have on the handout too, has given place to the hegemony of gender equality. So this means that equality has been the right or natural ideal to have in Sweden for a very long time, only now with the focus changing from class to gender. So everyone is expected to relate to gender equality in Sweden, and to do so in a positive way. And when it comes to parenting, this means that fathers are absolutely expected to take out parental leave, and they're expected to share the unpaid work at home equally with their wives. And if they don't, they will have to justify themselves. But despite this norm of gender equality and the vision of ourselves as a gender equal country, Sweden is also a place where 75% of the parental leave, which is 16 months, is taken out by the mothers. It is a country where mothers stay at home to a much larger degree than fathers with the children when they're sick. And it is a country where women living in couples are in worse health than men than women, single women, and for men the situation is the opposite. So the situation is somewhat limping, and I will have this gap between norm and ideal and reality in mind when I look at these fathers' presence in the novels. In Swedish politics, the father's presence in the home has been seen as a determining factor to solving the mother's problem of combining motherhood and other aspects of life, most importantly work. But is this presence in regard to the children evidently a presence in regard to the mother and the project of gender equality? I will show how in these books the father functions both as a helper and as an obstacle in the mother's quest for personal freedom and a place of her own. I will first look at the mother's problem and the image of the father as a solution, and I will then look at the recurrent theme in these books of the mother leaving the family, and finally I will present some concluding remarks. So first, the mother's problem and the father as a solution. In literature, there's often a problem with which the main character struggles. And in these books, the mothers, who are all quite emotionally unstable, struggle to mentally survive. And within this struggle, guilt plays an important role. Maternal guilt is, I think many of you know, widely discussed within mother literature. And it's also a recurrent theme in literary accounts. It is considered to be a stumbling block for mothers' well-being. And according to the French philosopher Elisabeth Badinter, it is the idea of maternal instinct which is at the source of this excessive guilt that many mothers do feel. And even if we can look at maternal guilt in different ways, it's obvious that the idea of the mother as the naturally caring parent has been a powerful tool to keep mothers, or binding mothers, women, to mothering. So the maternal ideal has also, Badinter says, justified men's lack of involvement in the home and with the children. It is interesting then to see that these mothers, to the extent that they at all think in terms of natural parent, they consider this natural parent not to be themselves, but the father. So in one of the novels, the mother explicitly refutes the idea of maternal instinct. And in two of them, the father is presented as this naturally caring parent. One of these mothers says, quote, "His closeness to the children has always been self-evident. I'm not jealous of that, it's just the way it is," end quote. She says that there are never any cracks in his voice, it never risks breaking as hers. Sunday afternoon and he irons 5 shirts, 1 for each workday, and when the kids scream, it doesn't get to him. Quote, "No need to get upset," he says to her. In the eyes of this mother, her husband is a perfect parent. And even though this annoys her because she herself is at times very far from being perfect, he's clearly an ideal. Quote, "I can't be like him, always patiently listening and understanding," end of quote. He's the parent she thinks she should be like. And in one of the other novels, at the birth of their first child, the narrator describes herself as alienated, whereas the father knows just what to do, seemingly by instinct. And here's another quote. "When Sarah was born, she was sticky and almost blue. Children look like that when they're born. Still I was shocked. I thought that she was dead. When put in my arms, I shook her so she started to scream, and the midwife and the nurses looked strangely and severely at me. Anders," her husband then, "had tears in his eyes and stroked my sweaty hair over and over. At last he dared to stretch out a finger and touch the sticky infant cheek. It all seemed so easy for him. He didn't have to decide what his hands would do and then execute it with precision. He just did, felt." And in yet another story, where at the beginning neither the man nor the woman knows how to be a parent, it is the parental leave which gives him, just as it gave her, all the qualities of a primary caretaker. And here's a quote. "When it was Johan's turn to stay at home, everything changed. Slowly but surely. Suddenly Johan was the one who knew everything, from when something was missing in the fridge or that Sigge needed a new winter coat, to which story Sigge liked the best. Suddenly I was the one who came home to a tired Johan in need of relief. I came home happy and filled with stories from the outside world," end of quote. So So in all these examples, the authors subvert the traditional parental roles, opening up a space for the father, not as law or intellect or breadwinner, but as a caring presence for the child, something which in this last example goes hand in hand with the making of a space for the mother in the outer sphere. So, and if we believe that the idea and the ideal of the naturally caring mother is at the root of maternal guilt, we would also expect this kind of subversion of the parental positions to make a difference with respect to how the mother feels and acts. And it does. And I will illustrate this with the theme of the mother who leaves. Leaving your children has traditionally, in our part of the world, been considered to be one of the worst things a mother can do. And as Jill Rye points out in Narratives of Mothering, quote, in Western culture, women who leave or give up their children are almost always branded as social pariahs, judged negatively as abnormal or monstrous mothers. End of quote. And to give a perspective on what's happening in the Swedish text, I will first say a couple of things about the mothers in the French text. The French fictional mothers rarely leave their children, and they usually mother alone. And the close relationship between mother and child sometimes even leads to the child's death. If the mother leaves in the French recent mother narratives, the situation is extreme, as if she needed an extraordinary force to break free from a close space in which she is expected to stay whatever happens. As Alison Stone, the philosopher, observes with reference to Marie Dariussecq's Le Mal de Mère, which I don't know the title of in English now, where the protagonist does leave her child at the end of the book. She said this mother is caught between the alternatives of, quote, selfless mergence in maternal bodily relations versus individual selfhood predicated on the rejection of those relations, end of quote. Differentiation between child and mother seems to demand a radical separation and a complete cut with maternity. As for the father in this story and in others, losing a junior, for example, that we discussed in October, he's not represented as a caring presence, but as somebody who antagonistically claims the child when the mother fails. In another rare story, which is actually not a mother narrative, but the mother is focused, Marie Ndiaye's Trois Femmes Puissantes, one of the stories in this novel, the mother actually does leave her child with her partner, which is not the biological father, but a father figure for the child when she goes away for a couple of weeks. But she doesn't trust her partner's parenting capacities and worries about her child when she's away. This father figure is described as himself a big child, who she considers irresponsible. The mother dreams of being alone again with her child without him, and when away she cannot let go the responsibility of a primary exclusive caretaker by way of calling and checking on them, for example. So let us go back to the Swedish text now. In all the Swedish books I look at here, the mother leaves her children as a solution when life becomes too difficult for them. And in 3 of them, she later returns before the end of the story. In the 4th, we don't know. This is not to say that leaving your children is a good thing, but to show that something is going on here when it comes to gender positions. In all the books, it is the father who stays at home to take care of the children. And in 2, he really saves them when the mother is falling apart. And these mothers never doubt the father's parenting capacities. They never worry that the child would not be cared for properly. The father's presence unsettles the traditional structuration of the mother-child dyad, and it makes it possible for the mother to reflect on her life as a woman and as a mother, and to do so separately from her child. I mean, really as herself. So from this point of view, the father corresponds well to the general idea of the new father in Sweden and functions as a positive part of the feminist project, or the project of gender equality. But there is also another aspect of the father's presence in these books, and an aspect which brings to mind the social-political discrepancy that I mentioned in the beginning between the idea of Sweden as a gender-equal country and the reality which statistics reveal. The historians that I mentioned, Rydström and Tjäder, affirm that the main obstacle today for Sweden to become a truly gender equal society is not laws or regulations, but men's incapacity to acknowledge the gender inequalities which still prevail. And in these books you find images of the father which agrees with this idea. These mothers cannot cope with life as it has turned out, and they need to get away to get perspective on things. This is something that the fathers, at least in theory, accept. But they do not acknowledge why the mothers feel this way. They do not see the heavy ideological load of motherhood, its package of guilt and impossible ideals, which is something that these mothers struggle with. And an aspect of mother's parenting which the parents don't share, even to the extent that they practice gender equal parenting. So mother and father come in from very different angles. And I will end this presentation with a scene which exemplifies this double image of the father, and how he's not only a part of what saves this emotionally unstable mother, but also a part of what makes her fall. It is the scene where the mother leaves. The father, who encouraged the mother to leave, is devastated and angry now that she finally does so. And he says, this is a long quote, "I will make sure they get to know. I will tell them what you did, that you just left, damn it." And he's talking about the children. He spits the words, and I feel the saliva in his aggressive breath, and I back away as fast as I can. He does it so mean. He has dragged the children onto the driveway and stands there holding Alma's hand and with Leo in his arms. The children are scared by his hysterical crying, I'm sorry. They don't know what to do. He who never cries. His face is ugly from crying. He screams himself mean and red. Even though we agreed, he said it himself, that it is best for all. He was so bloody understanding. And now it comes, hits me straight in the face, and there's nothing I can do but to stand here and take it. It is not fair. It's just not fair. And if I had not thought that, I would not have had the strength to open the car door, seat myself in the front seat, roll up the window, turn the key, back out and drive away. The mother is leaving. The father is staying with the children. The father is linked to a very traditional role, female image, spouse standing in the doorway, helplessly watching the husband leave. And he's associated with the home, she with the car and the outside world. And the description of him crying hysterically associates him to another female image, hysteria. The mother, on the other hand, holds the traditional paternal position, leaving the family, driving away in the car. But if we look at the feelings expressed, we can see a significant struggle which points in another direction. They had agreed that her leaving would be best for them all, but now he doesn't accept this, and the tool he uses to get to her is guilt. Quote, "I will make sure they get to know. I will tell them what you did, that you just left, damn it." But she resists, and it is the idea of fairness or equality which helps her. Quote, "It's not fair, it's just not fair, and if I had not thought that, I would not have had the strength to open the car door, seat myself, and so far and drive away." Quote, end of quote. So this is one example of how the idea of fairness or equality functions as a protection against guilt in these books. Guilt and equality stands out as opposite forces in the lives of these mothers. The father's presence is an important tool to help the mother free herself from the guilt linked to the idea of the mother as an exclusive natural parent and to move towards gender equality. But his presence in regard to the children is not inherently positive for the mother. Depending on the situation, it can function both as a positive force linked to gender equality and as a negative force nourishing maternal guilt and thus pulling the mother back to the ideal of the altruistic mother, which she fights. That's one of the main fights in these books. So how should we understand this? And I think we could turn again to the Swedish socio-political situation. Politics of parenting in Sweden is currently to a large extent conceptualized in gender-neutral terms. We don't talk about mothers and fathers, we talk about parents. And this is clearly a very positive move. Instead of seeing the work-family balance, for example, as a women's issue, it's been seen as a general socio-political structural problem concerning all parents. But, as the sociologist Klint and Johansson argue, this move away from gender not only carries the possibility to render visible and to defy the power structures between men and women, and thus help us on the way to gender equality, but it also carries the risk of rendering invisible these power structures and the differences between mothering and fathering, which do exist historically, or the idea of what is a good mother versus what is a good father, for example, and thus cementing rather than dissolving the differences between mothers and fathers. And these fathers in these stories, I think, can be seen as connected to both these tendencies. Finished. I have no idea how long this took. Okay.